There's so much going on lately. Fable, the newest model from Anthropic, has been re-released, and now the GPT 5.6 generation of models is public. The government has allowed that. And as always, there's a new debate going on. Last year, we were wondering if we should even be handwriting any code, and now we're wondering if we should even be reading any of the code at all, now that we have this next generation of models. Now, I'm actually going to look at that question very seriously. Of course, I have my biases. Everybody does. I think most serious people at this point would say that the idea of not reading any of your code is just a ridiculous thing to do. And I would certainly agree with that, even now, even with models like Fable and GPT 5.6. But that doesn't mean there isn't an interesting discussion to be had. And so a few things I want to mention, first of all, is that most people are already not reading most of their code. Unless you're like Jonathan Blow and you're even implementing your own game engine to create your own game, there's a lot of layers that you are not responsible for. Obviously, there are things like operating systems and database engines, which are generally pretty reliable. Then there are language runtimes, which are also usually pretty reliable, but not always. If you took a look at the Bun Rewrite blog, you'll see that they had plenty of issues. For the more relevant parts, things like libraries and frameworks and things like component libraries for front-end frameworks. This generally makes up a lot of the code that's actually being shipped, but we're only responsible for a pretty small amount of it. That's one point that's made, but also keep in mind that just because you're not responsible for this doesn't mean another person isn't. There is a distinction between not reading AI-generated code versus not reading code that another human has written. Also, keep in mind that people, generally developers, are the ones still responsible for choosing these things, choosing which framework to use, which library to use. And so there is a level of trust established if you're using a framework like React. You know, there's a lot of people that are responsible for making sure those things are high quality. And there's a lot to lose if those things have a lot of issues. Another thing I want to look at is this very oversimplified diagram, because I think this is actually where a lot of disagreement comes from. This is where a lot of actually the hype is built. And I know I've criticized the hype machine a lot, but I don't think it's always people being nefarious and trying to manipulate other people. I think it's just that people are approaching things completely differently. Now, before I get started on that long-winded rant, I think now is a good time to take a short break. There's a lot of debate lately on the future of software development. I don't have all the answers, but one thing I am confident in is that most agentic development is going to move away from agents running on your machine to agents running in the cloud. That's why I want to tell you about today's sponsor, Cursor, who's early on this. Well, first of all, I'm already experiencing one of the benefits as I'm recording this because I record on a Windows machine. I generally develop on my MacBook, but everything is synced because I'm actually in my browser right now. All of these sessions that I have are automatically going to be synced to any device that I'm using, including even my phone, actually, because now they do have an iOS app. And a concrete example, a couple weeks ago in one of my videos, I talked about having a bug fixing recurring event. I think that's one of the best use cases of agents. I get a lot of bug reports. Normally, I tediously would copy paste it into a prompt, have the agent fix it. If I try to schedule it on my machine, I have to worry about my machine actually being on and not asleep to make sure that automation actually runs. Well, with cloud agents, you obviously don't have to worry about that. It makes so much sense. Why isn't everybody doing it? Well, one of the reasons is environment setup. You already have everything set up on your machine, including like permissions and stuff. You probably don't want to have to manually set things up every single time you spawn a new cloud agent. Well, Cursor actually spent a lot of time making sure that was as painless as possible. And as evidence, I clicked just a single button and Cursor figured out everything about how to set up and run my app. And as proof, it automatically recorded a video that I can watch as proof that it actually did run my app and it works as expected. I'm really excited about this. You can try it out at neatcode.fyi/cursor. So like I said, this is an oversimplified diagram. It's also highly company dependent, but my idea of a junior dev, like the core responsibility is to generally implement things. And usually that's code. Now, there's a lot of other responsibilities of a junior dev as well. You're learning about the product, you're involved in meetings, but the core responsibility is implement code that you may not even be designing. Now, for each of these roles here, it's not always a one-to-one. Pretty much everywhere, I think, there's like a level of you're working one level up and working one level down. Like there's a lot of overlap between, like for mid-level, there's some overlap for above and below. Once you go one level higher, you're also designing your own code. At least that's like a core responsibility. That can involve API design or some level of architecture design. The design part is really always been the most important part of software development. That's why the actual implementation could be delegated to somebody else. If it's just about implementing some functions, not that that's not important, not that that couldn't be done wrong, especially depending on the type of work you're doing. This is extremely important, but the design just encompasses more than that. And the actual implementation is dependent on the design. And one level above that, you get to senior or tech lead, which I'm kind of merging together. And I'm also ignoring that there are higher levels than this, like principal engineers. The core responsibility is to design and delegate. Now, obviously, it's company and role dependent. There are plenty of seniors that don't end up delegating. They just design and implement their own big features. There's no way I could create this diagram that would be accurate for every company and every person. So let's just try to keep it simple. But these designs are generally bigger and affect the entire team. So you might be even choosing which frameworks to use, which databases to use, and then breaking up that work and then delegating that work. And then there's managers and directors where things get kind of blurry. But at this level, generally, you don't write code, and most of the time you don't read code either. That's kind of the point of this section. And depending on company size, you might not even have this, you might just have that. But the idea is that this is sort of a spectrum, right? I want to talk about one of those disagreements. For example, we've had a lot of people, even before the models got really, really good, which was, in my opinion, November of last year, we had people saying before, and people are saying now with Fable as well, that, okay, I just give it a relatively vague prompt, something like, okay, build X. And that could be anything, maybe a calculator, maybe a web app that works end to end. And what they get out is something that actually works. Even some kind of video game, it does actually work. And so that's when they say, holy crap, all of this stuff, everything below it is no longer necessary. Now, at the same time, on some level, this was kind of always possible in terms of you could just go to somebody's GitHub repo, clone something as close as possible to it, and then say that you delivered the thing that works, even if it didn't do exactly what the person was asking for. Well, even the LLMs at this point don't exactly do that. And there's a lot of things baked into this. I'm going to try not to overcomplicate it, but I think this is actually also where a lot of the disagreement on what the best model is comes from as well. For example, Fable is pretty good at this. It's actually really good at inferring things and making good assumptions, even if details aren't provided. So that's why a lot of people prefer that. Now, I actually, even after Fable came out, I actually still used GPT 5.5 for most of my work because I operate at a different level. I have tried to do this many times, and I have even actually been willing to live with imperfect code. But there are certain things that are very hard to ignore. It's hard to recognize those things without an understanding of code. Very quick example, basically we were duplicating some functionality from one page to another. This involved a few components, I think, that aggregated to like a few thousand lines of code. In my mind, it really showed a key distinction between people and LLMs. LLMs are machines. They can just write a ton of code very quickly. No human could possibly match that. But they also just do dumb things. Even with the best models today, what the LLM did is something that no human would possibly do. It basically duplicated all of the functionality rather than making those components reusable for the other page. No human would ever do that because they know it, like it would just involve way more work. And not only that, but it would be much less maintainable in the future. And in our case, that was pretty important because we're also working on a redesign right now. So ideally, we should try to keep things as simple as possible, especially if you're thinking about the long run. But an LLM isn't going to do that. I mean, you can tell it to, and if it's a trivial thing to make the component reusable, it'll do that. But I've found that it requires a lot of steering that only a developer could do. People, even some developers today, if they didn't handwrite code, they don't know the pain of re-implementing something from scratch. If instead we can just make it reusable. It's almost kind of like an analogy of like the concept of a leaky abstraction. Many of you may have dealt with this before, but I think one example is like component libraries. I don't like component libraries for UI frameworks. And honestly, I don't even like the idea of frameworks in general, though they are often necessary and I do use them. Because the idea is that the point of an abstraction, like the point of something like a compiler, is that most of the time, and with compilers, it's like really true the vast majority of the time, is that it'll abstract something so that you don't have to go down. So if I'm operating on this level, which is where everybody wants to operate these days, that we want to get rid of everything below it, but if it doesn't, and it does not work one-to-one like a compiler, not just because the LLMs haven't gotten good enough, but also because they are non-deterministic. And this is always clear for anybody who's looking, even with Fable. A concrete example I'll give you. Sometimes I'm running a few different chats with Fable. I use the Claude desktop app. I'll already have my app running. Maybe in a different chat, we'll see, okay, I'm trying to start the app. Oh, the port's already taken. Sometimes it'll say, okay, the port is taken. Let me just test it on that port. This is like for browser use. And sometimes it'll say, okay, the port is taken. Let me just start a new instance of the app. And this is even if everything is on the same branch, same work tree. So it doesn't make sense to do that. So why does the LLM do that? Well, because it's non-deterministic. Now there's one last point I want to make, and maybe this is the part that will ruffle some feathers. I might piss some people off, but I think most developers operate here, and it's because they want to. It's not like a good developer can't be a manager if they wanted to. A technical person probably is more capable of operating at this level, I personally believe, than a non-technical person. But we don't like to. And one of the reasons I think is giving up control. And so this is the part where I'm going to make the argument that in many cases, it might actually be okay to not look at the code. I'll admit right now, there actually is plenty of code that I've committed and shipped over the last few months that I did not closely read. Now, it's more nuanced than that. An analogy would be that somewhere on this spectrum, whether you want to say it's here or somewhere in between, but somewhere generally here, there is ownership and responsibility of what is going on inside of the entire org, the entire application, the entire company. But no one person can actually be responsible. Like the CEO is technically responsible for the code that the junior writes. And so if there's some massive security issue or maybe a production database gets dropped, the CEO kind of owns that. Now, what's the solution to that? Does the person who owns that have to now say that, okay, to prevent that in the future, I have to be the one that writes and reads every single line of code? Of course not. The idea is to scale the system, the company, the culture, without having to do that micromanagement because it's just not feasible. And so I think on some level, this is where the people who are saying that we should read less code and the same people that are saying that we should now be doing loops engineering and software factories and all that stuff, I think that's where this is getting to. Because to prevent things like these, we have systems in place. We have setting permissions with least privileges that are needed. Systems like static typing. And most recently we saw with the bun rewrite, One of the reasons that they went from Zig to Rust is because of something I think I was talking about in one of the podcast episodes, is that it's technically possible to do everything in Zig in terms of like the end product that they're now doing with Rust, but it's about setting up a system doesn't just boil down to skill issue, because there's always going to be a skill issue. The goal should be setting up a system that minimizes the risk of things going wrong, and also that maximizes the value that can be created. And even with that rewrite, it wasn't as trivial as saying migrate from one language to the other and make no mistakes. There was a lot of thought that went into that. And so I think what makes it confusing is that everybody thinks that now we should be operating on that level of like the loops engineering, setting the systems in place so that AI can then just fill in the blanks of everything. But we're definitely not quite there yet. I think there's so much still involved on this level, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try to operate more on this level. I think it kind of goes to the trade-offs between going slow versus going fast. The extreme is that you just end up with code that doesn't work or that just turns into slop. And if you go too slow, obviously you would never ship code. So there has to be some kind of happy medium. And that's always been the case, not just with AI code, but just building in general. I think we've recently seen that things are moving in this direction. I definitely find myself trying to like force myself to do this as well. And there are many times where I push too far in this direction and realize that I've just ended up with things that don't work at all. And then I have to find myself slowing down. And even to this point, if you want to know how I work, I still am operating below that line. When I'm building something to get what I actually want, I still have to do smaller scoped tasks using a faster model than something like Fable. And I don't see that changing for most use cases anytime soon. And I'm not even working on anything that crazy or complex. But let me know what you think. There's a lot of arguments to be made, and I think the entire industry is figuring it out as we go.